بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا المرسلين محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أما بعد. So several years now pass by and the Prophet and the Muslims are openly doing da'wah, and many people become Muslim from various families, and several people from outside of Mecca they become Muslim as well. However, this did not relieve the Prophet from the difficulties and the obstacles and the abuse and the torture that they received. This only increased. Okay? And some people, unfortunately, even left Islam. Some people, due to the difficulty, they even left their religion. They became murtadeen. Many people had sabr and held on, and they will be rewarded in Yawm al-Qiyamah, in the Day of Judgment. We find a particular individual, Uthman ibn Mad'un, who was related to the Prophet through Rida'ah, who gave protection to a Muslim called Walid ibn Mughira. Walid ibn Mughira, he was given protection by another person who was not Muslim called Uthman ibn Mad'un. And Walid ibn Mughira, upon seeing the rest of the Muslims in difficulty, in harshness, being abused, being tortured, and not having any protection, unlike him, he had a lot of protection, he was protected, he felt it extremely difficult. How could he live in such ease and protection, and the rest of his fellow brothers and sisters having so much difficulty? So he went and he told Uthman ibn Mad'un that I relieve you from your protection, to protect me. I don't need your thank you very much, Jazakallah khair, for your protection, but I relieve you from the duty of protecting me. To which Uthman here said to him, did anybody harm you? To which Walid said, no. I want to experience what the rest of my brothers and sisters are experiencing. And he actually tried to persuade him not to leave his protection. He said, look, they're going to harm you, you're underneath my protection, no one will harm you, you're going to be okay. But he then said no. And then they both agreed that they would go to the Kaaba and publicly announce that he is no longer underneath his protection. So he made a formal announcement, he is no longer underneath his protection. Which, in other words, he's saying, I am open to any harm that you may give me. That's what he's trying to say. In other words, I am exposed. I'm a free target, because he wanted to experience what the rest of his brothers are experiencing. One day, a famous poet called Labid, he wasn't a Muslim at that particular time. He came, and the Arabs loved poetry and loved the poets. And whenever a poet came and sang poetry, it'd be like, and many people would come to listen. It'd be the equivalent of a musician coming, or a concert, or this type of nature. People come in and sing and so forth. Everybody will come to listen to them. It'd be free, no tickets. So Labid was a famous poet who people would come to listen to. And he was singing some poetry, or reciting some poetry, and he got to it, and Walid ibn Mughira, who was a Muslim by the way, who was no longer protected, was sitting there listening to this poetry, and Labid recited a long verse of poetry, and he came to a particular part to which he said, and everything except Allah is nothing, will be gone. Only Allah will remain. Only God will remain. To which then Walid ibn Mughira interrupted and said, yes, you've told the truth. Which is very rude. It's like somebody giving a speech, or somebody singing, and then somebody butting in. A very important announcement, and then somebody in the audience, hey, yes, you're right. That's extremely rude. But he ignored it. And then he continued, and then Labid said, and all the delights, pleasures shall vanish. To which Walid ibn al-Mughira said, "You've told a lie." He shouted out, "You're lying, you told a lie." Paradise will continue, I should never vanish. To which then Labid, who wasn't his first time coming to Mecca, but it was his first time being interrupted, he expressed his him being annoyed, and he said, "Oh, people of Mecca, what is this? People talking and while I'm singing, while I'm reciting? What is this? This has never been. Since when do people must interrupt in Mecca? Since when?" And they told him, look, this man's foolish. There's no way these silly people these days, and so on. And a particular individual got up and smacked Walid ibn al-Mughira in his eye. And then Uthman ibn Mad'un turned to him and said, "Look, had you been underneath my protection, this wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have hit you. You would have been protected by me." In other words, look, I told you this was going to happen. To which then Walid ibn al-Mughira said, "I don't want your protection. Allah will protect me." And he said, "My other eye is in need of the same treatment as the other eye." In other words, saying, this eye's had this treatment, subhanAllah, this eye should have the same treatment. This eye's missed out on the reward. This eye does not share the same reward as the other eye, subhanAllah. I wish this eye had the same treatment. So this is the way of those Muslims back then. And in the middle of all this treatment, you had the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they would go to Abdul Muttalib several times to try to persuade Abdul Muttalib to give up the Prophet. And they even said to him, I think we mentioned this last week. They even said to him that, "Look, we will give you another boy, another man. Take him, inshallah, and give him Muhammad. We will replace. We won't just take him and kill him. We'll replace him, but you give him to us, and we will give you somebody else and replace." To which Abdul Muttalib said, "How can I do this? How can I give you somebody? Can I give you my own flesh and blood in exchange for somebody else? This is not the way." And the Prophet, and actually Abdul Muttalib actually said, "I will continue to protect the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam." And this led to several difficulties, because what happened was this, that the mushrikun came together and they said that Abdul Muttalib is not helping. He's protecting him.
Abu Talib.
Huh?
Abu Talib.
Abu Talib is not helping. He's protecting protecting Muhammad, and our families are falling into difficulty, and our children and our women are being split, and we need to tell him that we will give him blood money for killing, in exchange for killing. So we'll give him money, the price of a man, and we'll give it to him, but give him to us, we'll kill him in exchange for the money. And they said no. They said no. Which then led the rest of Quraysh now to finally come to agreement that the only way to deal with them is to do what we call nowadays economic sanctions. Economic sanctions. And they gathered, and they wrote wrote on some paper the rules. They made a new law, and they said that Bani Hashim and Bani Muttalib, nobody from the rest of Mecca will marry into their families. No one will marry from them. Nor will they be allowed to marry into any of your families. No one will marry into them, and no one will marry out of them. Okay? And nobody will sell anything to them, nor shall they buy anything from them. Okay? and nor shall anybody sit with them or talk to them or anything at all. Until they hand over the Prophet ﷺ so that we may kill him. So we either no food, no drink, no one's going to marry you, completely isolated. For 3 years this happened, yeah? Until you hand over the Prophet. Hand over the Prophet, khalas, we'll give you food and so forth. Several people, there's different narrations, but it says that the individuals who wrote this pact, that the Prophet made a dua against them, and their hands became paralyzed. They couldn't use their fingers anymore, the hands. And then they hanged this pact or this treaty. They hung it inside the Kaaba, and they then began to enforce these economic sanctions. So the markets, no one would sell anything to Bani Hashim, Bani Muttalib. No one is going to sell anything to them, nor shall anybody buy anything from them. Okay? And any food or anything in the marketplaces that were on sale, people would go to buy them quickly before Bani Muttalib, Bani Hashim could buy them. So they complete isolation. Which now means that Bani Hashim and Bani Muttalib now have become isolated, and they remove themselves somewhat from the society. And they go to a certain area in Mecca, and this was on the tribe. Everybody in the tribe, not just the Muslims, no, even non-Muslims, the whole tribe. The idea behind it is trying to force the tribe to hand them over. But they didn't. Those who were Muslim from the tribe, because they're Muslim, and those who weren't Muslim out of tribalism, he's one of us, we're not going to hand him over. So they punished the whole tribe, Muslim or non-Muslim, but there was no exception. Only the Prophet's uncle, Abu Jahl, was the exception. He's that one exception. And it continued like this for 3 years. You imagine, you go to Tesco, no one's going to buy it, no one's going to sell anything to you. You go to the meat place, no one's going to sell anything to you. You go to the shops, no one's going to sell anything. Imagine that, for 3 years no one's selling anything to you. What are you going to eat? What you going to drink? Nothing at all. No one going to sell anything to you. No one's going to... Imagine if you were buying, if you were selling, if you were business, no one's going to buy anything from you either. Even in your shop, you have a shop, nobody came to your shop. Only the people from your tribe. What are you going to do? 3 years they had patience. And they said that they were forced to eat the leaves on the trees. Nothing else. And their mouths inside became affected from eating of leaves and so forth. And Abu Talib, what he would do, he would actually tell the Prophet to come and sleep in his house and sleep in his bed. He didn't want the Prophet to sleep in his own bed out of fear for his life, in case somebody would kill him and he would tell the Prophet to come and sleep. And Abu Talib would send somebody else from his family to sleep in the Prophet's bed out of fear. Every night this would happen. For 3 years. Then, one day, the Prophet came to Abu Talib. And don't forget that this pact that's been written, it was hanging inside the Kaaba. Nobody could have access to it. Only the people who had the key. The Prophet comes and tells Abu Talib that the pact that was written down, that Allah had ordered the worms to eat away at the pact, and the only thing that's left is the name of Allah. Everything else has been eaten away. This whole pact, nothing left. All are written, all gone. Only thing left Allah's name. And he told Abu Talib, this is all that's left. Abu Talib said to him, is this as Allah told you this? God told you this? He goes, yes. So Abu Talib then goes with several people from his tribe, and they go to near the Kaaba. And when people see them coming, because they've isolated them, they've moved away slightly, people see them coming now, people begin to suspect that they're coming now to negotiate. And obviously the negotiation is what? Hand over the Prophet. So they go, oh, here they come. They probably have, after 3 years now, they've given in. And they come. And Abu Talib is there. And he says that between you and us has been this pact, and they said, let us come to some agreement. Bring out the pact. Let us, relook at things, reassess the things. Okay. So, and Abu Talib did not tell him straight away that the things the thing has been eaten away. He wanted them to see him, see himself. So they bring it out, and he's there. And they were in no doubt that the Prophet would be handed over to them very shortly. So they put the pact that was rolled up in a box. They put it in front. They said to Abu Talib, now the time has come. They said, it's now time for you to give up that and hand over that which we want. Abu Talib says, I've come today for something of importance. That my nephew, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he has not told a lie to me, has said that this pact here, that's hidden from us, that's in your hands, that Allah has sent to it the worms, and they've eaten away at it, and the only thing that's left is Allah's name. And this is due to the oppression that you've handed over. This is a sign from Allah. Allah's not happy. Allah hasn't allowed this the worms to eat away at it. And the only thing that's left is Allah's name. In other words, everything else is false, and that which remains, which Allah's name, is true. And then he says, if what I'm telling you is true, then we will never hand him over to you as long as he's alive, until the last one amongst us dies. As long as somebody living from amongst us, we're never going to hand him over. However, if what I'm telling you, what I've been told, is false, then we will give him to you straight away. Okay, so you may kill him. So they're like, that's a good deal. That's a good deal. They're thinking, oh, okay, that's a good deal, subhanAllah. They're not really, because they think a piece of paper. I mean, if you left a piece of paper here, for 3 years, and you got books and stuff like that, it doesn't fall apart. Even in the heat, it lasts for a long time. For it to be eaten away by the worms, and stuff like that, hundreds of years. So you go, okay, it's very easy. Plus, they had the key. No one go in there. Only they. And no one's looked at it. So they said, okay, that's a good deal. Let's open it up. And they open it up, and the only thing that's left after the whole pact, the long pact, all the conditions, is Allah's name. Everything else, all eaten away. Now you would imagine this would be enough now. This would be enough. But these people, subhanAllah, their hearts are covered. They say to Abu Talib, they accuse, wow, this is sorcery, this is sihr, this is magic, the magic of your nephew. He's done some magic, he's done something. It's not normal. And this only increased animosity and hatred. And Abu Talib and his family said, if there was any sihr, any magic, any animosity or hatred, it's not from us. It has come from you. If there's any magicians or sorcery that are lies, because they accused him, your nephew is a liar, he's done some sorcery, he's done some magic, he's a liar. And they turn around and goes, no. Any sorcery, any liars, lying, it could be from you, not from us. Because you're the ones that are harming us, we're not harming you. Okay. And what happens is that the peace treaty then becomes absolved. They remove the pact, this economic sanctions then become removed. The Muslims, the non-Muslims take pity, and they then remove themselves, from this pact. And the Muslims then go back to their usual interactions. But this continued for a long time. Okay. So as we mentioned, the harm to the Muslims only increased. The harm to the Muslims only increased. And what we heard that the Muslims begin to are given permission to go to Medina. And some of them go to Medina, and then upon hearing that things have become easier in Mecca, they return. But upon seeing that the situation in Mecca has only increased, because after the lifting of the economic sanctions, the mushrikun just increased their hatred. They just found other avenues, other ways of harming the Muslims. Okay, they didn't do that. Didn't last, 3 years is a very long time, but they still continued, and they were very colourful and inventive to making things harm for the Prophet and the Muslims. What happens now is that the Prophet now gives permission to the Muslims to actually go and make Hijrah. Okay? The first batch go and come back after hearing things are okay. And then when things increased, the Prophet now gives permission for the Muslims to head to Medina, to Abyssinia. And the Prophet tells them that in that land there is a king who is just, a king who is adil, a just king, and he does not oppress anybody. A just king who does not oppress anybody. So go there and you will find peace. So the Muslims start leaving. They start going to Abyssinia. And this tells you that the Prophet had knowledge of the king. And whether this was unseen, knowledge given to him by Allah Azza wa Jal, or otherwise. But the Prophet had knowledge of it. And they went, and Ruqayyah, the Prophet's daughter, and her husband Uthman were from the first to go, and they left Mecca a few at a time. They didn't all leave straight away, a few at a time out of fear. And Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, the Prophet's cousin, also went. He's going to play a very important role. So some big Sahabah actually leave to Abyssinia. So they arrived at Abyssinia, Habasha, and when the mushrikun heard, the mushrikun of Mecca heard that the Muslims had left and gone to Abyssinia, they didn't just say, "Oh, thank God they've gone. We got rid of them," which is what some people may think. They're gone, out of sight, out of mind, as they say. They said, "No, we can't allow them." So why? Because we don't want them going over there and getting strong, becoming strong, and getting more numbers, and coming back and kicking us out of Mecca. So they had the idea. They had the idea to, let's send Amr ibn As and Umar ibn Walid, these two individuals, let's send them over there. Amr ibn As had very good relations with the king of Abyssinia. Okay? Actually, one is called Umar bin Walid, and the other one is called Amr bin As. Umar bin Walid, and the second person is called Amr bin As. They were sent with specific instructions. They said, look, take animal skins, which the Abyssinians like. Take a whole bunch of the finest animal skins. Take it with you. Go there. Don't go to the king straight away. Go to his ministers, the bishops, the people who advise him. Give the skins to them, and inform them that people from our land have left, and their families want them back, and so forth. And these people are not from our religion, nor are they Christian. So you don't have any allegiances, or under any obligation to protect. And if you could persuade the king to hand them back to us, that'd be good. So in other words, they gave the bishops and these advisors the gifts, and then told them, look, back us up, back us up when we speak to the king. And they said, yeah, okay. They said, okay, we will do that. Okay, so they then went to the king. They went to the king, and they put down their case to the king, and they said to the king that and when they went to the king, they prostrated, they did sujood. That was the custom. The Jahiliyyah Arabs, they would go and do sujood to the king. That's what he expected. And obviously, he looked down upon them. He didn't, he was a Christian, and they worshiped idols. And he being a Christian, looked down on them, saying, these statues, these people don't know anything. So they come, and the king and Najashi knew. He knew one of them. And they came and they gave him gifts, and then they presented the case. They said that, "O king, some of our young, foolish people have run away and have left our religion, and they have not entered into your religion, and they have come with a new religion that is unfamiliar to us, and their families and the notables and the people of honor have sent us to bring them back." Their fathers, uncles, and so forth. And their families are in more. Their families know them better than us and you. Their families are, they have their best needs, their best interests at heart. Okay. And obviously they were the Amr and Umara. They knew, and they realized that under no circumstances must the king be allowed to speak to them. Why? Because they knew that this king is a very just king, a wise king, and if you heard what they had to say, anybody of any intellect will agree with it. So they didn't want him to speak, because if they realized if he spoke to them, it's gone. And that's why they went to the bishops and the ministers first, convinced them. And the ministers and the bishops, they said, yes, yes, king, it's good that, send them back. These people know their own people and know their own problems better, than us. When the king asked, where are they? They told him that they are in your land. He got angry, and he said, no, by Allah, I am not going to hand them over until they come to me and I investigate if what you are saying is true. If what you are saying is true, I hand them back. And if they're not, then they can stay. Don't forget, the Prophet said to the Muslims, go to Ard al-Habasha. There is a king who is just, does not oppress. See the Prophet? There's a king there. He won't oppress. He didn't say, okay, take them back. And the king said, no, people have taken protection, have come to me, and who have chosen me over all others, until I sit with them and ask them. If they've chosen me, they've had a good intention, they've come here, sought my protection over others. The least I can do is listen to them. Okay? To see if what you're saying is true. So they send. He sends for the Muslims, and all the Muslims get rounded up. Now they're like so shocked. What's going on? Why are they going to see the king? What happened? Only the Muslims, nobody else. So they realize something's happening. And they go into the king's realm, and they said, "What are we going to say to the king if we're gathered?" And they said, "We shall say what Allah and His Messenger have taught us." Okay? No matter what that would entail, what that would lead to. And Ja'far ibn Abi Talib says, and he's a handsome, very handsome man, very intelligent individual. He says, "Leave the talking to me. I shall talk on all your behalf." Okay? Not all talk at once, like a big ramble. No, one individual will talk on behalf of everybody else. Okay? So they come into the kingdom, and he has his ministers, his bishops, and they have the scrolls and everything. They're waiting there, and he has his translators. And Ja'far comes in, and the Muslims, and the Najashi is impressed, by their faces. They have nur. And he realized these people are very different, not like the rest of you. These people are different. So when they come in with all the nur and the light and the hayba, that struck him. And they came in, and unlike the previous Arabs, they did not prostrate. They did not do sujood. They did not do sujood. And the king found this very strange. He's expecting to come and... When they didn't do that, he found it very strange. And he inquired. He said to them, "Why is it that you are not, like the rest of your people, that we have come to know, that you prostrate in prostration?" And they said, we do not prostrate only to Allah, only to God. So there's a big difference now. There's a big difference there. So the king now is realizing these people don't worship statues, they worship one God. That's something very new. Very new. So the king then said to him, "What is this religion that you have left your previous religion for? What's this new religion? Tell me something about it. A religion which, this new religion, in which you have not entered into my religion, and you've left the religion of your people." Okay? And Ja'far then begins a beautiful speech. Very interesting. He begins. He goes, "O king, ya ayyuhal malik, kunna qawman ahl jahiliyyah. We were a ignorant people. Ignorant. Ignorant people who had no knowledge, no guidance. Why were they ignorant?" And he explains that. His address is all about how to make... he's giving the king, or he's planting in the mind of the king that you and us are very similar. We have a lot of similarities. And you and us, or you and I, are similar, and we are different to what these mushrikun are on. And he begins to say several things that catch the king's attention, and that was the point. The point is drawing similarities. You and I are the same. So he then says, "We were a ignorant people. Why? Kunna na'bud al-asnam. We used to worship the idols." That's the first thing he mentions. We were ignorant. Why were we ignorant? For what reason did you call yourselves as being ignorant? We used to worship idols, statues. And we used to eat dead meat without in the correct way. And we used to do vile acts, fawahish. And we used to cut off family ties, break off family ties. And we would harm the neighbours. And the strong would eat the weak. The strong. So all these are things in which Christianity, obviously they're against. Christianity is against this. Yeah. And he says, and we used to be that. كنا على ذلك. We used to be on that way until حتى بعث الله إلينا, until Allah Azza wa Jal sent to us a messenger from amongst us. Okay, somebody who we knew his family, we knew his bloodline, and his truth, that he's truthful, does not lie, and his amana translated as trustworthy. Trustworthy. And we know his chastity, his ifaf, so he was chaste, and he called us to Allah. Why? To worship one God, not two, not three, and to worship Allah, and to leave what we were on before, and to leave the religion of our parents, that which is the worship of stone and statues. And he ordered us to worship Allah and the one, and to not associate partners with Allah. And he ordered us with prayer and giving charity and fasting. So all these things that the Christians are doing anyway. And he began to explain several things. And then he said, وَأَمَرْنَا بِالصِّدْقِ الْحَدِيثِ, and the Prophet told us to be truthful in our speech. What you see in the beginning, they said, what should we say to the king? He said, we're going to say what Allah and His Messenger have told us. We're not going to lie. No matter what that means, where that leads us. وَأَدَاءَ الْأَمَانَةِ, and to give over the trust that have been entrusted to us. وَصِلَةَ الرَّحِمِ, and to make family blood ties, to have ties with our family members. وَحُسْنِ الْجِوَارِ, and to have good, and to be good to our neighbours, to be good neighbours. And it's very interesting, good neighbours. So that would make him feel guilty. We're your neighbour. We've been taught to be good to our neighbours. Which would mean in his mind, you should be good. We're your neighbour, so be good to us. So and وَالْكَفَّ عَنْ مَحَارِمِ الدِّمَاءِ, and to stay away from that which is haram and from the spilling of blood. وَنَهَانَا عَنِ الْفَوَاحِشِ, and the Prophet forbade us from doing fawahish, vile, depraved acts. وَالْقَوْلَ الزُّورِ, and false oath, lying. وَأَكْلَ مَالِ الْيَتِيمِ, وَأَكْلُ مَالَ الْيَتِيمِ, and eating the food of orphans. وَقَذْفَ الْمُحْصَنَاتِ, and accusing innocent women of doing acts of adultery. And so then he says, after all that, and he says, and we believed him, فَصَدَّقْنَاهُ, and we believed him, what he said, and we, وَآمَنَّا بِهِ, and we had belief in him, وَأَتْبَعْنَاهُ, and we followed him, عَلَى مَا جَاءَ مِنَ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى, that which Allah has given him. فَعَبَدْنَا اللَّهِ, and we worshipped Allah Ta'ala, the one, not associating partners with him. وَحَرَّمْنَا مَا حَرَّمَ اللَّهِ, and we made forbidden that which Allah has made forbidden on us. وَأَحْلَلْنَا مَا أَحَلَّ لَنَا, and we have made permissible that which Allah Azza wa Jalla has made permissible. And despite this, despite all these good things, nobody can argue with these things, that despite all of this, our people have made enemies of us, and they've transgressed us. فَعَذَّبُونَا, and they have harmed us. وَفَتَنُونَا, and they've given us fitna in our religion. Why? لَيَرُدُّونَا, so that we may leave our faith, leave all these good things. To what? In exchange for what? To go back and worship idols and statues. And leave Allah. And to وَنَسْتَحِلْ مَا كُنَّا نَسْتَحِلْ مِنَ الْخَبَائِثِ, and to make permissible that which we used to make permissible before our religion from the evil. فَلَمَّا قَهَرُونَا, so when they forced us, وَظَلَمُونَا, and oppressed us, وَضَيَّقُوا عَلَيْنَا, and they constricted things, again, they made things constricted for us, they made the things difficult for us. وَحَالُوا بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَ دِينَنَا, and they came as barriers between us and our faith. خَرَجْنَا, we left. إلى بلادك. إلى بلادك. Well, we left our lands to come to your land. And then he says, it's very clever what the next words he uses. وَأَخْتَرْنَاكَ. And we chose you. He didn't say we chose your land. He said we chose you. وَأَخْتَرْنَاكَ عَلَى مَنْ سِوَاكَ. We chose you over all others. We could have chose other people. We chose you. وَرَغِبْنَا فِي جَوَارِكَ. And we found it was pleasant to us, happy for us to be here. We were in need and desirous. We wanted to be here. وَرَجَوْنَا. And we had hope. In what? أَنْ لَا يُظْلَمْ عِنْدَكَ أَيُّهَا الْمَلِكِ. And we had hope. رَجَوْنَا أَنْ لَا نُظْلَمْ. That we would not have dhulm. That we would not be oppressed as long as we're with you. Oh, khalas. MashaAllah. If you analyze everything he said, subhanAllah. He put all the things down first, how we used to be. MashaAllah, statesman. Now, subhanAllah, Muslim people, we get the wrong people talking for us. And because of these idiots, the people in charge make the wrong decisions. You see? Well, look at this man, MashaAllah, a politician, you see. He came, he put all the right things down first. How we used to be. We used to be like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we used to do all these bad things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Until the Prophet came. And the Prophet told us to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we began doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then our people went against us. Started doing all these things. And then we looked for somewhere and we chose you. And we came to you. You're the best one for us. And we want you. And we don't want anybody else. So now the king he says, don't forget, it's very interesting. The king says, don't forget what the Prophet said about the king. This is a king who does not oppress. He's a just king, adl, does not oppress. He then says to them, because obviously there's always two parts of the story. He's heard this side and now he's heard this side. So he said to them, do you have anything of this new religion that you can read to us? And Ja'far says, Na'am. And Ja'far then begins to read to him some verses from the surah Kaf, Ha, Ya, Ayn, Sad. And then as he's reciting and it's being translated to him, the king actually cries, Fabaka. And the king actually cries. He's not Muslim yet. And his ministers, the bishops, they also cry. And don't forget, these people were Christian. And they closed their scriptures to listen to what was being said. After hearing this, the king, he's not Muslim. How many of us heard the Quran, never cried once in your life? And then the king then stops them and says that what you have brought, وَالَّذِي جَاءَ بِهِ عِيسَى, what I have heard, what you have brought, and that which Jesus brought previously, has come from the same mishkat, has came from the same source, the same light source. In other words, that what I am hearing, what you are bringing, what you are telling me, is prophecy. It's the same thing. It's coming from the same source that Jesus has brought. The same source. So Prophet Muhammad said, "Isa above prophets." That's what in other words what he's trying to say. And don't forget. He was a just king. He then turns to Amr. And he says to them, "Are these your slaves?" Because don't forget, if they were his slaves and they ran away, he has to give them back. They're his property. So he's being fair. He's making sure. That's why the Prophet said to the Muslims, "This is a just king. One does not oppress." And here, by him asking the mushrikun, are they slaves? In other words, are they property that belong to you? Because if they are, despite everything, we'll give them back to you. Despite everything. That's why the king was so just. And they said no. So he said to them, "Did any of them owe you any money? Are they in debt? Because if you run away from a debt, then you have to go back and give the debt. Because they owe you any money." And he said, "No, they're not neither our slaves, nor do they owe any money." So then he says to them, "Well, in that case, they're free to go. Let them go. They're free to go in my kingdom, and nobody shall say anything or do anything to them." So when Amr ibn As left, he got very upset. And he said he had a plot. And the mushrikun, they always plot. Allah is the best of plotters. And they say, we will tell the king what they really believe in Isa. Because they knew that Muslims did not believe that Jesus was the Son of God. Unlike Najashi, the Christians, they believed Jesus was the Son of God. So now he's trying to say, look, we'll use this. So he went and told the king, the Muslims, they say great things. أيها الملك إنهم يقولون في عيسى قولا عظيما. But they say a great thing against Jesus. And he tells them, فاسألهم. Ask, okay, ask them what they say about Jesus. Ask. He didn't tell him. Yeah, he didn't say, they believe that Jesus is not the Son of God. Because in case the king said, I don't believe you. He said, they say something great against Jesus. Ask them. In other words, find out yourself. The king then calls them back. The king calls them back. And they go back. And they've been called back, and now they're a bit worried. Why now? What's going on? Why have been called back? And they say, they are asked. And everybody's there, the bishops and everybody else. And this time you'd have Amr ibn As on the right hand side of the king. And you had Umara on his left. And the bishops were sitting down. And they said to Ja'far and the Muslims, ماذا تقولون في عيسى ابن مريم? What do you say about Jesus? See, now they caught him off guard. They brought back again. And then Ja'far ibn Abi Talib says, we say about Jesus that which our Prophet has told us. نقول فيها الذي جاء به نبينا. We say that which our Prophet has told us. نقول هو عبد الله. He is the servant of Allah. ورسوله, his messenger. وروحه وكلمته ألقاها. He is the ruh, what's the translation? The spirit. وكلمته ألقاها إلى مريم. And he is the speech in which he cast into, and Jesus is the speech of God in which he cast into Mary. Mary. When the king heard this, same thing, no difference. And he hits his hand on the ground, and he takes a piece of twig, ثم قال, and he says, what you have brought and what Jesus had brought is no different than this twig. That which you have brought, you haven't brought anything new, no more than this stick. In other words, the difference to you and I is like the stick, very similar, very little difference between you and I. And then he turns round, and obviously the mushrikun, one on the right, one on the left, they probably thought, here, look, we're gonna tell you, we're gonna show you now. And they think the tables are turned. They look stupid now. Don't forget, the king is a just king. He then orders all the bishops that they have to return all the gifts, the skins, they all have to be returned back to them. Return everything back. And he returned his skins, his gift that he was given, take it back. Return it back. And then the king said, welcome to you. مرحبا بكم وبمن جئتم من عنده. Welcome to you, and welcome to the one whom you have come from, the Prophet. And he says, أشهد, I bear witness, I testify, أنه رسول الله, that he is the messenger of Allah عز وجل, وأنه الذي نجد في الإنجيل, and he is the one whose description we find in the Gospel, the Bible. وأنه الرسول الذي بشر به عيسى, and he is the messenger, the prophet who Jesus told us about, that will come after us. And he tells them, go wherever you want in my kingdom. Wallah, لولا ما أنا فيه. If it wasn't for the fact that I am a king, لأتيته, I would go to the Prophet myself, حتى أكون أنا الذي أحمل نعليه, until I'd go to him and I'd go to the Prophet and I'd carry his sandals for him. Oh, should I say? So this is a testification that he's Muslim. I believe that what he's brought is the same as, is what Jesus brought. And if it wasn't for me being the king, responsibilities, I would go and I would be his servant. I would hold his sandals for him. I would be his servant. And then he ordered food to be given to them and clothes to be given them. And then he told them, "Adhabu fa antum aminun." Go, you are free and safe in my land. And he says, whoever says anything against you will be fined. A fine. Ghurim. Gharima. He will be fined. Ghurim. And he says it 3 times. Anybody abuses you shall be fined. Anybody who abuses you shall be fined. Like anybody now, they say something racial against you, they go to court, they be fined. Or maybe in jail sentence. So I see, mashallah, they had human rights already. And he says, and goes, I would not be happy with a mountain worth of gold if I knew that you were being harmed. So a mountain worth of gold would not, if I knew you were being harmed, not even a mountain worth of gold would make me happy. Just for one man to be harmed, to me, would not be worth a mountain worth of gold. And then in one narration, the king actually says to them, does anybody harm you? أَيَأْذُونَكَ أَيَأْذِيكُمْ. Anybody harms you? And they says yes. So then he ordered somebody to say, مَنْ آذَى أَحَدًا مِّنْهُمْ فَأَغْرِمُوهُ. Anybody who harms these people, let them be fined 4 دراهم. 4 dirham is quite a lot of money. And he says to them, أَيَكْفِيكُمْ. Is this enough fine? And the Muslims say, no, make it higher. So to be safe, so big fine, no one's going to say it. So then the king says, the king tells the person who said it out loud, increase it, make it higher. Okay? Let us stop there, inshallah. If you make a note, so next week I ask you, we're going to start where the Christians in Abyssinia began to spread rumors that the king has left his religion and become Muslim. That's where we'll start. We will start there. Okay, inshallah. So next week when I ask you, make sure you say that. And don't say the previous weeks, we left off the previous week, about the jinn, last week. Any questions?